Hello and welcome back to the Wheel Talk podcast. My name is Abby Mickey. I'm joined by Gracie Alvin.
Hey.
Loren Rowney.
Good morning, everyone.
We are here to talk about women's professional road cycling, and today we've got La Vuelta a España Femenina, which started on Sunday with a team time trial. We're going to dive into it, talk a little bit about the opening stages, but today's episode is going to be a two-parter because today, as we're recording, a little bit of behind the scenes. This is a Monday morning, so the first stage is the only stage that's happened so far. And the second half of this episode will be post stage 2, after I think we will see a little bit of a shakeup in the situation, at least the general classification, and have some audio diaries for everybody. We've got a couple audio diaries on the ground from riders from Canyon-SRAM, Lidl-Trek, FDJ-Suez, Liv AlUla Jayco. So it's going to be a great two-parter of an episode for everybody today. But to start, it's the three of us in the studio, kind of, to talk about the team time trial that opened the race, which was very eventful. I think we all kind of thought the team time trial wasn't going to affect the general classification, but could make it interesting. And that didn't really happen, but there was a lot of light shed on the peloton going into this race during the TTT. So that's what we're going to talk about. I think we start with the winners, and that is Lidl-Trek by 2 milliseconds. After incredible performance going into the final stretch with 300 meters to go, Ellen Van Dijk and Eleanor Backstead crashed into the fencing. And I think they would have obviously won by more seconds if that hadn't happened, and potentially put Gaia Riolini and Elisa Longo-Borghini ahead of their rivals going into the rest of the week. Potentially wouldn't have changed who's in red after stage 2, but it would have given them a tiny bit of a buffer, a little tiny buffer. But major bummer to see Ellen go down. You know, we love Ellen. New mom, and with big goals on the horizon for this year, the Olympic Games. So as of recording, there's no update on her at the moment. According to the team, they will inform me in a couple hours when she's up and about. But we'll talk about that on the second half of the episode. Bit of a weird one today, but I think it's fine. It's a stage race, so everything's weird. But yeah, it was really heartbreaking to see her go down. But also incredible to see how the team saved it, especially Gaia and Lizzie, who were on the back of the train when the two of them went down and basically just went full throttle to the finish. And speaking with the riders on the team, or a rider on the team, they said that the plan was for Ellen to try to be in red at the end of the stage. But because Gaia and Lizzie were coming with so much speed, that's why Gaia finished first. So they came with more speed than Brodie, Amanda, Spratty, and Elisa, basically.
Yeah, I think it was interesting, actually, like you said, watching the TTT, because Trek said it was 7 starters, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. And seeing Gaia actually just sit on, which I think when you're such a tiny rider, at least from my minimal experience with TTT, it's easier to pull through than sit on. At least that's been my experience. It's actually really hard to sit on the back unless you're super skilled in the TTT discipline. But she had Lizzie on her back there basically as like a sweeper, ensuring that if she did lose the wheel, then Lizzie would be there to sort of bring her forwards, because I guess in that discipline, Gaia just doesn't have that kind of power that you need for such an effort. So that was really interesting to watch, but how she managed herself was pretty good. So to begin with, they only had 5 riders actually contributing to the effort, which I thought was phenomenal. I mean, Trek are always up there with the TTT, but then to do it with just the 5 and not the full 7 was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, we saw Neve Fisher-Black also doing that same tactic of sitting on for pretty much the whole TTT, and I think it is harder to sit on the back if you have been gassed, but I think if you just start that way, it's not too bad. You do have to definitely be on it. If once you drop a bike length, you can get into trouble very quickly, but I think that they were managing that quite well. So to number one, get them through that stage, and potentially number two, save the legs a little bit for the upcoming stages, I thought was not a bad tactic for those smaller riders that are not necessarily going to add value to the overall horsepower in this particular stage. But cool to also see Trek employing just that little extra safety net of Lizzie there. So that was also smart.
I mean, it's pretty incredible that they finished with in theory, all 7 riders. Like, even with the crash, the UCI rule is that with a team time trial, if riders go down within a certain, like basically the 3-kilometer rule, but they move it depending on the length of the TTT. If a rider goes down, they don't actually have to finish the stage to continue on to stage 2. So technically, even though Ellen was taken off the course in an ambulance, she can start stage 2. She didn't have to finish. Eleanor Backstead also didn't have to ride to the line, and both of them finished on the same time as the team when the teammates they were with when they'd crashed. So it means that all the top 7 of the general classification at the moment before stage 2 is the 7 Lidl-Trek riders, which is incredible, because if you look at the other teams that were close to them in time, like Visma Lisa Bike finished with 5, and that's still really impressive. And like SC Works as well only had 5 finish as well. So we'll talk about Canyon-SRAM and their situation in just a second. But for the 2 teams that were closest to Lidl-Trek in time, they both basically expended 2 riders in the TTT, used up 2 of their riders, and that was their job on the day. And they got their top riders, their GC riders, but also, like, for example, Voss, who I assume will be in the red jersey in the second part of this episode. But yeah, for Lidl-Trek to have all 7 riders finish is really incredible. And to have only 5 riding really and still win is also incredible.
Before we move off talking about Lidl-Trek, I just want to give a shout out to Eleanor Backstead, who has been, one of the key domestiques there, and she was really great, so strong on the day, and also had a really good performance on her own in that Borsalay TT that Ellen won. I think she got 3rd there or something. So it's nice just to recognize those riders, and good to see her up there.
Quite understated, Eleanor. Like, she's been on the team for many years at this point, and she's such a strong domestique, and she comes into a lot of these top races and is barely seen. And I think that that's just because she does such a great job in the beginning of the races. But she's really a very, very quiet asset to that team.
She's certainly been more present on the coverage this year in the spring races, which has been cool. Like, she's going deeper into the races and just adding more and more value there.
Do you want to talk about her sister, since we're talking about that Backsteads right now? Can we jump to how incredible Zoe was? I had to remind myself, when I saw the Red Bull helmet, I was thinking, it's Dygert. And I was like, it's not Dygert, it's Backstead. How many minutes did she spend, or kilometers, should I say?
Bull anymore.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
No, I think that they, that's beside the point. But yeah, the Canyon-SRAM team had a stellar performance. They finished 8 seconds down on Lidl-Trek with only 5. All 5 of their riders finished, but they started with only 5 because they went into the race with 6. But on the morning of the TTT, Neve Bradbury had to pull out because of illness. And so they only have 5 racing, and they still were able to finish 4th behind Lidl-Trek, Visma Lisa Bike, and SC Works, only 8 seconds down, which is just incredible. And yeah, Zoe did a ton of work. I mean, she was basically spearheaded the team, but they also had other really strong time trialists there, like Antonia Niedermeyer. She's insanely strong, and so is Bauernfein, so is Maike van de Duin, and she's on the track, so she's a track rider as well. So they are good at the kind of effort that you have to do for a TTT, especially a 20-minute long TTT, and obviously Kasia with her experience. But it's just, I feel like 2 different overpowering emotions when I think about Canyon-SRAM and their performance on Sunday. One is just awe that they were able to pull that off with 5 riders, and another is confusion, because why are they going into the race with 7 in the or without the 7 in the first place? I understand having a rider get sick on the eve of the race, like there's very little you can do if Neve wakes up the morning of the TT and is too sick to race, and her health takes priority. So absolutely, like I wouldn't mess with that. But where is the other rider? They're missing 2, and only 1 got sick, and I just don't. I'm sure that there is a good reason that like Alessia Shabby isn't racing, for example, but she was riding so well at the Ardennes. And it's just, if you're going in with arguably the second best favorite for the race in Kasia Niewiadoma for the overall, and she's already down 2 helpers. It's just kind of a little bit of a disappointment, I think.
I think it's sad she's lost one of her key climbers, to be honest. Because could you imagine if she'd had Bowen find Niedermeyer and Bradbury? I would say that actually Canyon might have had the numbers
better climbing
again.
Team than anyone else.
Yeah, well, in Liège, Bastogne-Liège, they were the team who had the numbers, the most amount. And that's what I was thinking. I'm like, going into tour season, actually, they're going to be the team to almost beat in that respect, that they're going to have the monopoly.
I think Bradbury's, a big loss there, but I also think that it may possibly be a good thing that they're looking ahead to the rest of the season and not cooking a few riders like Shabu, who's done a lot in the spring. Like, there's still a lot of big races coming up this year, so I hope that's why. That's the reason to not, pad out the team and bring other riders in. Despite this being an important world tour, I still think that they've got, a big season left to go. So it's not a bad thing either to see them just managing in that way.
Is Canyon one of the World Tour teams that has the least amount on their roster? That was just a question I was wondering, because that's 100% correct. Like, there are some riders that definitely need to be rested now. But with, some of the teams I think have got 18, 19 riders now. That's more the question.
Yeah, they've got 15 riders, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a lot, but it's also it runs down pretty quickly as well. So
yeah, particularly with injury or illness.
Yeah.
And sometimes those things aren't really publicized.
Shabby didn't post on social media anything about like taking a break or anything, but I was just checking her Instagram because some riders will post, okay, spring season is done, time to take some time or something. But I mean, Gracie, that is a really good point, that it's only, April, almost May. So still early days in the season with big races on the horizon to come. Like the tour is going to be a huge target for Kasia, I'm sure. So yeah, she'll definitely need Shabby there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's interesting about the Canyon-SRAM lineup, actually, looking at it on First Cycling, is that Sherry Bussett is still on the roster for them.
Yeah, she's still riding around in that kit. So I guess, I don't know how many years her contract was, but this is her last year of I'm doing the bunny ears, the doping ban. She's
signed through next year with them, in theory. For those who don't remember, last year after Tour de Normandy, I believe, she tested positive for, I think, a steroid.
Exactly the same as the cyclocross rider Toon Arts, who actually just won a gravel race on the weekend, the World Cup in Valkenburg, I believe he won. Same area, same race, actually. It was just, I think he was at the men's race or something like that.
Yeah, same area of the world. And I think he was at a cross race. She was at, the Tour de Normandy. And they tried to band together to get to prove that it was like some kind of contaminated
meat
substance. Yeah, contaminated meat. But it's been kind of a quiet. I mean, it's quite rare that a woman tests positive for anything, but there's very little known about the situation, so
yeah,
not really to talk about it. But anyway, I was just looking at the Canyon-SRAM lineup and was surprised to see that she was still on there.
Well, maybe that means as well they believe her story too, if she's still, because I think it would be within their rights in the contract to terminate. So there must be something there.
Yeah, it's usually written into the contracts that if you test positive for anything, then they can they can strip you of the contract pretty much immediately. I'm surprised actually, like, I guess that this means that for sure Chloe Dygert is just focusing on the nationals coming up and the Olympics, because this was the race that she really kind of broke onto the road scene internationally. Obviously, as a previous world champion time trialist, she's on the road scene, but in terms of road racing and world tour road racing, she'd not done much before last year when she came to these races in Spain and almost won a stage of the Vuelta, and was really impressive in the opening stages before she ultimately left the race early. So I'm kind of surprised not to see her at this race, to be honest, but I do know that the TT coming up at nationals she in theory has an automatic spot for one of the 2 spots for the US at the Olympics coming up, but I know that there's a lot of weight on the time trial, the nationals time trial, and that's, I believe, like a week after this race ends, or 10 days after this race ends. So it's she's, maybe the 2 things are why she's not racing in that are related. But imagine if she'd been there. Fuck, they would have won the TTT by like 10 seconds.
Yeah, I'm still surprised that she was at some of those cobbled classics.
Yeah.
And not at a race like this, but yeah, like timing's everything. So everyone's got their own funny plans going on in this Olympic year, as we try not to mention all the time.
I think we've done a pretty good job this year. There was more talk
Yeah,
of the
I feel
Olympics
like we
last
really
year.
held back.
Yeah.
But yeah, a couple other like interesting things to pick up besides Canyon-SRAM in there, like going in with a little bit less horsepower than other teams. You also had, as Loren mentioned, SC Works Pro Time had Niamh Fisher-Black actually sitting on the back of the TTT, not doing really much work at all, which is very interesting going into the rest of the race, and her, whether or not like she would have been able to contribute to the TTT, or they just really wanted her to save her energy. Is she a protected rider going into the race? What does that mean for Vollering? Vollering obviously would have had to work. She's a very, very good time trialist, so she can't exactly conserve energy, and maybe she was holding back a little bit still. But that was interesting to see. What do you guys take away from that?
Yeah, I think that TTT is a whole other beast, and you either have that power or you don't. Like, it's just a brutal event, even if it's only 20 minutes. So like, she might not have been able to contribute in a positive way anyway. She's super strong on a climb, but that doesn't often translate on a TTT like this. That's flat and just high power efforts for 20 seconds over your FTP, and then however long, a minute 40 off. It's just doesn't suit some people. And then on the other hand, it's interesting to see that maybe that she was trying to save some energy. I'd love her to bounce off Vollering this week and to see a bit of a 2-carded hand for that team. So yeah, I think it was interesting to see that.
No, I agree with Gracie, and say she had contributed a little bit to the TTT, she would have been one of the riders that got dropped eventually, because like Gracie was saying, you either have it or you don't, and once you lose that wheel, it's virtually impossible to get back. And in order to do that 1-2ing off each other, she needs to be high up in the GC, so they have 2 cards to play, because there's no point her being 20 seconds to a minute down going into the rest of the tour. And that would be the same with Gaia, because Elisa, she could very well win the tour as well. So they've got 2 really strong cards to play. And it's going to be very exciting now that I'm thinking about it, because, the 1-2ing, I hope we get to see a lot of that. And it'd be fun to see like a Gaia versus Niamh situation again.
Yeah, I mean, I love to see that the team is putting this faith in Niamh, because as I've said before, I feel like that they've put her in a leadership role before, but not necessarily when she was ready for it, like not emotionally or mentally, like physically. Like, I feel like she knows what she's doing. She's an incredibly talented rider, but like when she was their girl at the Giro, There was not, it wasn't, it didn't feel right. It didn't feel like she was on her best form to take on that role. And if you're not like flying on the bike and your team puts pressure on you, it's going to feel all that more crushing when you can't actually deliver, but it's not your fault, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but maybe one of you can try to articulate it better. But I feel like now how she's ridden in the early season and what we've seen from her so far, I feel like physically she is ready to take on a leadership role with SC Works Pro Time. And also that's the thing is like, were she on any other team and there was a leadership role put on her like in the years, last year even, it would have been a completely different situation than if you're wearing an SC Works jersey and you have a role as a leader on the team. It's like the weight of pressure is times 100 because it's the best team in the peloton. There's just a certain standard. If she was on like, I don't know, DSM Firmenich Post-NL, just throwing out a team, and she had a leadership role at the Giro, and she ended up 4th overall, it's an incredible result. But if you're SC Works, it's like a whole different fish. So I feel like that was kind of watching her at the Giro and with her audio diaries and stuff. It felt like that it was a premature position for her to be on within that team physically. Not that she doesn't have the capability, like she absolutely does, and she's been that strong in the past, but it was just that year and that situation in that month where it just didn't come together. But right now, like judging how she's doing right now, it is the perfect time to put a leadership role on her or a co-leadership role with Demi. And so I'm happy to see them allowing her the space and like letting her sit on, in the hopes that when it comes to the mountains later on in the week, she's going to be one of their key riders that is going to make a difference in the race.
Well, it's quite simply, it's succession planning for that team. And they have to now because everyone knows that Vollering's not going to be there next year. So it is time for Niamh to step up, but it's also a bit of crunch time for that team as well.
Unless they sign Kasia.
It's like dead silence. We're all like
elsewhere on the results sheet, just a shout out to EF Education Canada, who finished 5th, and which is just an amazing result from a team that is not a World Tour team, and they should be a World Tour team. If you went by like points, if you went by the point structure and you tallied up the points on that team, the riders that now make up that team from last year, they probably would be a World Tour team, but they are not. So to finish 5th ahead of a lot of World Tour teams, including last year's winners, Movistar, winners of the race overall, not the TTT, Movistar, Liv AlUla Jayco, FDJ-Suez, DSM, AG Insurance, Soudal, Roland, Phoenix de Koonik. I mean, they finished ahead of most of the World Tour teams. So pretty incredible to see, and awesome for who I assume is their leader going into the race, Kim Kadzau. She's only 9 seconds down now on the general classification going into the climbing stages. Their other potential leader, Veronica Ewers, lost 56 seconds, but I think that's probably all the better for them, actually, to maybe allow her some freedom should she want to get up the road or something along those lines. She's got a little bit of a pillow now between her and anyone else, so they won't be looking at her. But Kim, on the other hand, given how she rode in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, she's on fantastic form, so she doesn't have that much between her and Kasia in the general classification at the moment.
You don't think Faulkner's going to be a bit protected as well?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say because she's not like really, we've not seen her on the big mountain climbs much. So I don't know how she's going to climb compared to Demi.
I'm just thinking Giro 2022. Was that it, the year, Gracie? That freaking epic performance by her. Because she's kind of like a Rusa. You think, nah, based on just their body type and everything, they're not going to be able to climb that well in the big mountains. But those types of riders have proved us wrong before. So I think, and And also just knowing a little bit the personality type of Faulkner, I think she'll want to have a co-leadership role for sure. And again, another team having a couple of riders up there in the mix is going to make for a very exciting race. I just wanted to go back to actually the very start of the podcast, how you were saying with TTTs, they can be quite often boring. I found actually the results, it was just interesting to see how close it was for me, because even though it was a relatively short TTT, we've seen before huge margins between, say, first and fifth. And I think for me, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, this is one of the first times it's been super close between so many teams.
I mean, I love a team time trial. I don't think they're boring at all. I feel like it was one of my favorite events because it's the only time you get to stand on the podium like with your team. It's just so rare that happens. If we compare it to last year's TTT that opened up the race, it was a K.5 shorter, and there was a little bit of a climb in it, but nothing too significant. Then Jumbo-Visma won the stage 1 second over Canyon-SRAM, and Lidl-Trek was third, 9 seconds down. So there were a lot similar gaps, but I mean, those top three teams on Sunday finished so close together. I mean, I'm super impressed that there's 4 teams within 9 seconds of each other.
Yeah, it could this tour, is going to blow apart on certain stages, but every second does count in GC. So there were some good time losses there for some potential GC riders. I'm looking at Cavalli, Lippert, Gigante. It is tough to make back 30 seconds or even 12 or 15 seconds sometimes. So yeah, it's a brutal event for that, especially to open up a tour. But it's also fun, like you said, because it's a bit of a leveler in a way to do it in a team, not just individual.
I think interestingly for FDJ-Suez, Cavalli lost an additional 12 seconds to the 9 seconds they lost as a team. And I think that they're really backing Avita for this race. I think that they're like full 100% behind Avita for as their GC rider for the race.
Yeah, and it's a smart thing. You don't want to put too much pressure on Cavalli at this point. After the past 2 years that she's had, she almost needs to just come into the racing, find her feet, enjoy it again, I would say. Be back in the team environments. They can definitely use her in places, but I don't think we're going to quite see her to where she was for a little while yet.
I hope someday, because I just miss her being up there.
It was just awful timing because she was having that incredible season, wasn't she? And it was kind of like, all right, we've got the next climber. But yeah, shit happens.
Well, a lot to look forward to this week. A lot of already cracks formed in the peloton. We'll be back after stage 2, Loren and I, to chat about how stage 2 went, and we'll hear from some riders about their time on the ground. Let's wrap up our bit with what we're obsessed with.
I can actually go first today, and I will thank and blame Gracie for this. I'm obsessed with Megan Rapinoe now. I knew a little bit about her, but after reading the book, thank you, Gracie, also with the great book recommendation 2 weeks ago. And I'm just so into women's football. I had gotten into women's football last year, but now just after reading the story and, being a former female athlete as well, I think it just resonates. A lot of the stuff she was talking about, and I didn't realize how much of an activist she was. And then it just makes you question your time as an athlete. Could you have done more? And sort of the topics that used to frustrate you personally. And a big thing for me was actually that equality in pay was something that used to really hurt my heart. And I've mentioned it before, coming from a female-only team to then a team that was, also male and female, seeing the disparity between the two really sucked. It really sucked. And it's just really cool to see what the women's football team did in the US and took, the US Football League to court. and kept fighting and fighting for what they rightfully deserved.
It's it's a great story. It's relatable to so many people, despite her being, quite identifiable in some categories. Like, I think there was something in that book for everyone. But it's so infuriating, some of those parts of the book, because the three of us have been there, and lots of, a lot of sports suffer the same and still worse at the moment. But like, it's infuriating purely that US women's soccer isn't still equal, like, after all that. It's
and
crazy.
The men's team is shit. I'm sorry. But it's like, how many Olympic medals and World Cups do they have to win? And then for them to turn around and go, oh, no, it's because of, what was one of the reasonings? The physical differences between men and women, or some bullshit like that. Meanwhile, the profit that they were turning over, I would say, compared to the men's, I don't even know one male American football player, to be honest. No offense, but I mean, you've got your strengths in other departments, but it's the women's football that's impressive. And it's the same with Australia. I'm sorry. It's the exact same case. The Matildas are a force to be reckoned with. And I again, the men's team are just never going to be on the same playing field.
It's just blatant sexism when it comes down to when they try and give those reasons of all the numbers and stuff. And when you look at the numbers, they're extremely entertaining. They get the viewership numbers. They're extremely marketable, and they prove that with all their endorsements and stuff. So you kind of like, well, the common denominator here is the sexism. And it's just like, anyway, one of my favorite parts of the World Cup last year was watching the games on free-to-air TV and then actually enjoying the ad breaks, because the majority of the ads included the female footballers in them. And like, I was almost in tears at some of the ad breaks, because it meant so much to me to see some of these female athletes like doing ads for, telco companies and food companies and like whoever was advertising through the World Cup. And like that to me was just like a big deal, actually. And it's the reach there like that, not just the viewership numbers, that are just proving time and time again how valuable women's sport can be.
Yeah, well, growing up, we didn't really see women on the Weetabix box, did we?
Well, I'm glad that you enjoyed the book, and
thank you.
She's cool. She's like just a cool person.
And also she's married, right? Did her and Sue marry, or they just, I don't know if they're actually married. But then her partner is also amazing. So
there's some cool female athletes around that have, they've got a vibe and a swagger, and they're just, very cool people that you want to be friends with. Like
I was just going to say that.
I've got the book. The book is sitting on my bedside table in Montana, so I'm ready to read it next week when I get back, or 2 weeks from now. And I can't wait.
Cool.
But I mean, in terms of like women's sport and just like reach and viewership, and it's been really cool. I've talked a couple times on this segment of the podcast about the Women's Professional Hockey League, but watching their viewer numbers this year has been incredible. Pretty much every single game they have, well, maybe not every game, but like every 3 games that they have in a stadium, they have the highest numbers of people to ever attend a women's hockey game. And the stadiums are packed, and seeing all of the little girls and boys with signs for the players. And the draft starts, I think, this week, and it's going to be really cool to see the shifts in teams and what that means for the future of the league. But I feel like right now we're in this massive boom of women's sport that is just really, really cool to live through. Really cool to see. Which sport is next is the question. Like which is the next that's going to... I'd love to see track and field kind of get a little bit more outside of the Olympics coverage, because I feel like they're one of the sports that really, all of the athletes, their livelihood is really tied to the Olympics, because it's just like such a massive stage, and how they do at the Olympics can basically set them up for 4 years before the next Olympics, or like pretty much tank their career.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was going to say, I hate to say it, but the track and field athletes at the Olympics are like the rudest group of people. Like they do not engage
I
at
said
all.
the same thing.
It was
They've
so
got,
disappointing. You're like, you think you're a big deal, but you're not. Like, you're just a person. And like, I don't know. Some athletes were just so friendly and so approachable, and the national team vibe was that's such a highlight at big major games like that. But like the two sports that just didn't even make eye contact or say hello, that was track and field and swimming. And it was just like, come on, guys.
I mean, the swimmers with their medal hauls and stuff, like it doesn't warrant the ego, but I can see that. But track and field, come on, Australia, it's not like we're the number one. We're not America.
No.
So,
well, some of the actual like throwing stuff in track and field, they were actually friendly. And then other sports,
it's the runners.
Just depends, I guess, who you had the opportunity to interact with.
Hannes, actually, I think for him with Team Belgium, it's not one of the bigger teams, but he got kicked off the table. He was eating breakfast, and then the men's row team came along and sat down, and then they needed a spot, I think, for Greg Manafama, and they asked him to leave the table. And I was like, oh, poor Hannes. I feel like that's probably why he doesn't like him in a professional way, maybe. I don't know. He's not a big Greg Manafama fan. He doesn't rate him.
Yeah, don't mess with Hannes's breakfast.
Yeah. Nutella on bread.
I'll go on to my obsession. I finally listened to a podcast that's been on my list for ages, called Wiser Than Me by Julia Louis-Dreyfus. She's the actress that played Elaine on Seinfeld, and is in that show, stars in the show Veep, which is very funny. But she's got a podcast and she interviews older women. And I've only listened to the first one, but it was with Jane Fonda, and it was just such a lovely chat. And in a lot of ways over the last, I don't know, year or two, I've been a little bit obsessed with aging, not in the way of looks and stuff, but like going through a transitional period in my life. You're kind of looking for meaning and all of that stuff. And there's just been a few things pop up that have just really resonated with me. Like on the show Alone that I've raved about in the past, one of the participants who made it really far into the show, and she was one of the oldest participants. She was in her early 60s, and one of her biggest takeaways was that, you know, she'd come to a bit more peace with her aging, and the way she explained it was that she was an elder in training. And I just loved that. I just thought that was something so nice to hold on to, especially as a woman, because aging is a bit of a scary thing, mostly because of the aesthetics of it in our society. And then, I don't know, this podcast, Wiser Than Me, just picks up some of those things as well, of having these great conversations with people that, you know, have had that time to look back on their life, but they've also got lots to look forward to. And I just think that collective wisdom, and also the goal of collecting your own wisdom, is like such a nice part of aging that I'm really enjoying. So I would recommend that, at least that episode 1. I'm looking forward to listening to the rest of them.
I think I'd love that. I listened to a beautiful podcast with Jane Fonda, I think last year. I don't know who interviewed her, but she's had the most fascinating life. And I think she speaks a lot about that, and how I think she feels more valued now than when she was she's famous, a young and beautiful Hollywood actress. So, and she's one of those people who is just aging with grace, I think.
Yeah, it's just nice to see that you can have value in society outside of being a young, beautiful XYZ. And I think, you know, coming from sport and athleticism, where you peak in your 20s and 30s, and, I've stepped past that now, and it's just nice to see other things to be valued for, that you can set short-term goals, but also goals that you never quite achieve, which is a nice thing about life.
I will definitely check that out. Thank you. I think that my mum needs to listen to that, because my mum turns 70 soon, and she was saying to me how at her age she's just not seen anymore, and she feels that. She's like, and she talks about it with her friends, how they're just not seen. Even getting on the bus, if she needs help with, because she's had shoulder reconstruction, to get the groceries on the bus because she's not driving while she's in Europe. It's like people just look past her and don't help, which I found really sad. And that's mostly women. More so, I think
that's
than
a common
men.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Finishing on that touching note.
Abby?
Yeah, my obsession was I already told you guys about this pre-recording, but going to a bike race this weekend, a mountain bike race in Latvia, was really fun. Lila got to do her first kids race and just absolutely loved watching all the other kids race, and watching her just be totally in her element, cheering on other kids and being so excited to ride her bike is really cool. She's a huge fan of the pump track. She just like wants to go endlessly on the pump track, and it is absolutely terrifying because there's like a bunch of big kids riding around her. And actually, I was pretty impressed with how respectful all the big kids were of Lila on her little like scooter kick bike trying to go around the pump track. They were all like really, really cool about her being there, and like weren't annoyed at all when she would just like stop in the middle of the pump track and they would have to go around her. So that was really fun, but also terrifying for a mother to watch a 2-year-old like. But it was really cool. It was just it's just so cool to see them grow up and like learn how to do things and take interests in things that you're interested in. And I like can see our future going to weekend bike races with Lila. I mean, heck, if she doesn't want to race bikes, like awesome. I could not care less. But like doing cool things with Lila that we enjoy doing, and so it was really fun. And the community in Latvia is just something else. Like they're just great people. So it's always really fun to be able to come here and see the people that we don't get to see all that often, and spend time in the cycling community here.
Now, Abby, I do have something that I want to have a little quick chat about. I did listen to the Taylor Swift's new album, and I have some notes. Look, I didn't love it. I appreciated it. I think it's for the fans and it's for her, which is totally fine and like great. There's some good sleeper tracks in there that I think are going to grow on me. I'm going to listen to it again. I think she should do more collabs. I think that's where she should go next, because I think that could be pretty fun, because she is such a good songwriter and I like her style a lot of the time, but I think it's getting a little bit tired and that she just needs to shake it up again. And I think collabs could be the way forward, because there was some couple of fun ones on that. So overall, pretty good, but you have to, I think that was one of the best ones. So yeah, I think if you're a super fan, it was great. I'm sure there was a bunch of lyrics in there that just went in one ear and out the other for me. I tried to pick up some of the Easter eggs. But yeah, that's my notes for you, Abby. I hope you like that.
I feel, I'll let her know. I feel like with this album, like on first listen, I was also like, oh, I don't know. But I have now not been able to physically pry this album out of my ears for 2 weeks or a week and a bit. And I can confirm that this is probably some of her best work. So I really think that you need to marinate in this album. Like, I feel like the more you listen to this album, the more like little things you'll pick up and the more you'll like it. And I guarantee that if you were to listen to it like 2 or 3 more times, which is a big ask because it's 31 songs, so it's not a small listen. that at the end of it you would agree. And I think like, yeah, a part of it is for the fans, but I think a lot of it is also just this album was made like as a full-on immersive experience is the best way to put it. Maybe not, but it's not like in a world of short attention spans, and where we are like so used to scrolling social media and TikTok and these quick hits of dopamine. I feel like this album is one that has gone over so many people's heads because it's something that you really need to sit with. And I read a really great article on CNN from one of their music critics, I believe, that wrote that they, after the first listen, they had written off the album as like a fun attempt, but no, it didn't really work. And after a week of listening to it, they had completely reversed their opinion. And I think that that's something that I'm seeing more and more of on social media. Although it's been pretty hilarious to continue to watch the world try to tear her down for the most ridiculous things.
Oh, yeah. I still think she's amazing. And I will definitely keep listening to the album because there was plenty of good bits in it that I was like, I think I need to listen to that again. It was a good hook or a good line or whatever. So yeah, she's very clever and very talented.
I agree though. Collabs would be awesome. There's so many, like, she has so many friends in the music industry that she hasn't worked with. And like, if she were to do a collab album, she could do 13 songs with 13 different styles of artists. That would be really, really cool. I remember Ed Sheeran did a collab album a couple years ago, Collaboration 6. It's like one of my favorite pieces work that he's ever done because he's also such a talented songwriter. But when he worked with other artists, it like really elevated both him and the artist he was working with. And there's a whole range of different sounds on that album. And like one of my favorite songs is with Stormzy. There's also a really amazing song with this like little known artist who I can't remember her name, but it's called Part of Me, or I can't remember the name of the song at the moment, but the music video is amazing and I just like love the song so much. I'll send it to the group chat. But yeah, I feel like you're right though. Like if Taylor Swift wanted to make a collaboration album, it would be so good.
Or even a covers album. She would do great covers, even though like I think people can look down on covers. I love when people do a good cover.
I don't want to keep going on Taylor Swift, but how long do you think she can keep this level of, what would you say? She's working like it's not coming to me. I just can't believe at the capacity that she's able to maintain this high standard. Do you know what I mean? With her tour, producing 2 albums, jetting around, having a relationship with someone, I mean, who is US, but still it's a lot to do everything she's doing. And then my second question is, do you ever see Taylor Swift as someone becoming a mother?
That is a good question because there was heaps of lyrics in that album about that.
Yeah, this has been a question in my head since being a mother. Can you envision
I think
that
she has a lot on her plate at the moment with the tour.
That's what I'm trying to
say.
She
has 2 re-records. 2 re-records that she still needs to do. And I mean, I think Reputation and the debut album are both done. She just has to release them. And I think with her current schedule, she'll release them next year. And then maybe she'll wrap up the tour next year, but it does look like she's adding Tortured Poets Department to the set list to make it a 3.5 hour long tour. So I think that might mean that she might do a whole nother round of the tour. But I do think, and then when she's done with that, she's actually directing her first feature-length film. So there's no sleep. I don't know when she sleeps.
That's what I'm trying to get at, actually. When does this woman sleep? Does she sleep? Because she has to sleep. She has to sleep because she looks amazing. Because if
she also like works sleeping out 2 hours a day, apparently. Fuck. I don't know.
Yeah.
She doesn't have kids, that's for sure. No, I mean, I think I think at some point, at some point it has to give. And also at some point she has to step away from the public eye because I mean, like I know that so many people are just like so tired of seeing her. As an experience that I cannot relate to in the slightest, but and a lot of it is the media attention, right? Like when she steps outside, the media writes 3 stories about her. Like, what is she supposed to do? She's just trying to live her life. It's like she's not doing it. She's just doing what she's doing, and everybody's freaking out. So it's not really her fault, and it's really frustrating to watch that whole narrative play out. But I do think at some point she does need to step away just for like her own sanity. And I also think that she would love to have a kid. I could absolutely see her becoming a mother. She'd be a fantastic mother. Anyone who is best friends with their mom is going to be an amazing mom. And she brings her mom with her on all of her tours and just absolutely loves her mom. And so I back it. But I don't know if that is something that's going to happen in the near future. Who knows?
I think you need to put
Travis
like
Kelce
a little...
would be a great dad too, though.
Yeah. You need to put this in the show notes.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
little asterisks. Last 10 to 15 minutes is...
Yeah. Sorry to the listeners that don't love the Taylor Swift chat. But that was probably the longest that we've talked about her.
It was bound to happen eventually. The Ed Sheeran song that I was thinking of is called Put It All On Me, featuring LMI, and it's really good, and I highly recommend the music video. But yeah, we'll wrap this up, but Loren and I will be back in just a couple seconds to talk about stage 2 of the Vuelta Femenina. And yeah, thanks you two for chatting with me about Taylor Swift, and I guess also bike racing. Editing, Loren and I are back after the second stage of La Vuelta. And to be honest, when we were trying to decide which stages to cover, I was like, well, the podcast comes out on a Tuesday, so we might as well just slip a little 10-minute segment in there to talk about the second stage. And we'll probably be talking about a Voss victory. It's probably not going to be that big of a deal, that stage. It's interesting enough to want to talk about it with the category 3 climb near the finish. I think some things happened during the stage that we knew were going to happen, and then all hell broke loose when we did not expect it. So I'll sum up the stage really quickly. There was a break that went up the road it was a pretty aggressive start to the stage to begin with, and then eventually a break went up the road, but they didn't get much time. They were pulled back by the base of the category 3 climb, which was about 5-6 kilometers long. Visma Lease bike set a blistering tempo up shelled Charlotte Kool, which was their goal. And over the top, the pressure continued. Solo break by one of the Volker Vessels riders, who that team is actually like quite a interesting team, and one that they've been on the attack in almost every single race that they've done this year, which has been pretty cool. And Aniek Dijkstra in particular, she won the sprint classification at Setmana Valenciana, and she won one of the smaller national level races in the Netherlands earlier this year. So she's been having a really good season. 5th at La Semaine. I mean, just like a couple really, really interesting results. So she went off on a solo mission, and for a minute there, it looked like it was going to be a close catch from the peloton that were being chased from behind by the Kool group and chasing a solo rider up front. And then the rain started to fall. And if anyone has ever ridden their bike in Spain, even the slightest hint of rain means that the roads turn into ice rinks. So with 3 kilometers to go, we saw a huge crash that involved Niamh Fisher-Black, Lizzie Deignan, Anna Henderson, Voss, it looked like went down briefly. Vollering was caught behind it. And then with like 500 meters later, there was another massive crash that involved a bunch of riders. And after that, it was just complete chaos getting to the finish. There was one rider the Czech national champion, Jelena Erish from Movistar, who went for like a solo mission. She was caught by EF Education Cannondale, and it was Alison Jackson who rode in for the win. And the general classification also got a shakeup, with Blanca Voss taking intermediate seconds. And plus the bonus seconds at the finish, she now leads the overall classification by 8 seconds, with Alison in second, Elisa Lange-Borghini in third at 9 seconds. And then there's a whole chunk of riders down to 11th place with a 9-second gap that includes Spratt, Riolini, Brodie Chapman, Lizzie Deignan, Demi Vollering, Voss, Mariana Marcus, and Eva van Acht. And so, yeah, it actually turned into quite a day.
Well, like you said, it was sort of unfolding how we predicted it to unfold. You know, Visma Lease a Bike taking charge to make sure that Charlotte Kool wasn't there, which they did a really good job. And honestly, towards the end, before the shit hit the fan and all that chaos ensued, they were coming back really fast, that chasing group. I think it went from 40 seconds to 20 seconds pretty quickly. And there was that moment where I think we were all thinking, if the front group just hesitates for a moment, that group's coming back, and then that could very well be for Charlotte, which would have been a huge victory for DSM, but that's just simply not how it went down. And that's all I could think as well, Abby, when I was following the race on my phone through a live sort of ticker, and as soon as they said, oh, there's a bit of rain sputtering, I was like, please just rain really hard now to wash all the oil off the road, because I don't know what it is, but it was like yesterday with Van Dijk. Well, actually, that was a puncture. But it looks similar to that when your wheel just slips out. It was like not the fault of anyone, just simply, slippery roads. And then what a chaotic finish. And I think the deserving winner was Alison Jackson, because she strikes me as a rider who thrives in chaos, and she somehow manages to put herself like in that right position, keep the brain switched on. I picked it. As soon as I saw that red jersey, I was like, this is for Jackson. Like, no one else. I couldn't see anyone else taking the stage, and her victory was just amazing. So excited.
Every time the race gets chaotic, we should automatically just think, oh, it's Alison Jackson. Because it's true. Like, Paris-Roubaix is the chaos, and the finish today was just mad. And so it just, totally, it now in hindsight, looking back, it's like, yeah, of course Alison won when so much was going on in such a short period. And in the end, Voss was even there in the group, and so was Kool. But it was so strung out at that point from the crashes and the chasing that, I mean, it was almost Arish who won the stage. Like, she really capitalized on the peloton breaking apart from those crashes. And the group did catch on, but because there was riders just all over the place, it didn't really matter for Kool in the end. And I think, you know, even if there hadn't been crashes and that group had caught back on, that Kool would probably have been cooked at that point. I don't think that where Voss is just getting kind of an easy ride up front, I don't think Kool would have had the legs to finish it off with a sprint. And I mean, DSM, like, they didn't, it didn't, like, I think if it looked like Kool had the legs to win, DSM would have sent riders back from the front group to help pull back, but they didn't. They just left it up to the riders that were in that group with Kool. Especially when it was so close, you would think that they would send riders back to help, but they didn't do that. So I think she didn't have the legs anyway. And I think, you know, for Visma Lease a Bike, it was their ideal situation where they set the pace on the climb. They dropped Kool. They didn't have to pull once they got onto that flat stretch of road, because other teams were like, okay, the top rider sprinter in the race is behind us now. So are a bunch of other riders. So we're going to ride. Plus there was a rider up the front. So that front group was chugging along pretty well without Visma Lease a Bike even touching the front. And I think that they would have, had we not seen the crash, they would have taken over pacing at the front under 2K to go, and Voss would have won the stage. But yeah, if it wasn't for, and like you said, it's literally not, it's not that it was pouring rain. It was like the tiniest bit of moisture. And that's enough to set off the roads. Like, if it had been pouring, it would have been fine. But it's just the roads in Spain, and especially where they were for the stage, it really doesn't rain often at all. So all of that buildup on the road just sits there, and the second it gets a tiny bit wet, it's just like an ice skating rink.
off mic, we were discussing the impacts this could have on the general classification, and actually someone that we'd spoken about in the episode this morning was Niamh Fisher-Black, and we were just hoping that this would be a big opportunity for her as a co-leader to Demi, and how ST Works Pro Time could use that. Those two riders could play off each other like Cassia Niewiadoma and Antonia Niedermeier. But actually, those two riders came down at the 3 kilometers to go. And when I was going through the results before, one of the websites has them actually at 50 seconds down, but it turns out we checked a different website and they should get the same time as the race winner, because they crashed literally at the 3K to go banner. So hopefully disaster was averted there in terms of general classification, because 50 seconds is a huge chunk of time in this tour. We were talking this morning that even, mere seconds, like 8 seconds, could be a game changer.
Yeah, I mean, they literally crashed into the 3 kilometer to go banner. That's the rule normally, and it kind of depends on the commissaire at the race and what they decide, but they crashed within 3 kilometers to go. And it looked like everyone who went down was okay, at least from the first crash. Pretty much everybody popped back on their bike. I think it was Voss had like a gorgeous cyclocross remount as she was like running down the road back onto her bike. But the two riders that looked like they were kind of the worst off were Duin and Anna Henderson. We'll have an update in a later episode. The only rider that didn't finish the stage was Henderson, which is a huge bummer for Visma Lease bike and also just fans of Anna Henderson in general, of which I am one of them.
My question was, Emma Norsgaard looked like she came down quite hard. All right, but I haven't.
She finished the stage, so yeah, she rode in. So we know that she got back on her bike at least. But yeah, Anna was the one who was like really on the ground. And Emma went down in the second crash on the roundabout that looked like that it was a huge pileup. That was a lot more riders went down on that one. I mean, it's just a bummer when this is how the stage ends. It's like amazing that Alison won and you love to see it, and her reaction after she won with the dancing and the high-fiving and like just being so excited to see every single one of her teammates is just amazing. But it's also such a huge bummer when you have to also mention that so many riders went down, and yeah, we don't know how a lot of them are doing.
And yeah, for a ride like Norsgaard, I was actually quite excited to see how she would feature in a finish like this. Because I think she's still coming into her form for the season. So we always say that's bike racing, but it's really not what you want to see, particularly with the first big tour of the season too.
Yeah, and the first road stage of the first big tour, and there's still a ton of time before other goals that are happening later on in the season. But it's for Emma, who is such a fascinating rider in the way that she's been able to adjust her style of racing and the specialization that she has as a rider, from being kind of more of a sprinter into what she is now. I feel like there are stages later on this week that would have suited her, even though she's riding in support of Lippert, who also went down in her first race back.
Lippert, it's going to be a big question mark, isn't it? First race back. You wouldn't want to put too much pressure on a rider like that. I think for her, it would be more getting the feel to, like I was saying about Marta Cavalli. It's still a matter of finding, your race legs again, and also switching on that race brain a little bit. So for Movistar, realistically, I think stages is where they need to look for opportunities, and there's plenty more to come.
It says on Twitter that they all will get the same time. No GC shake-up, but I'm sure that people are going to be sore tomorrow, which will mean that tomorrow's stage is 2,441 meters elevation gain. It's not a climbing stage. There's only one categorized climb, but it pretty much the entire stage goes uphill. So it's not really a GC day. And with sore bodies on the on the start line, you think that perhaps it's a day that actually a breakaway could capitalize on the peloton wanting a little bit of a rest before we get to kind of the bigger mountain stages to come.
If Elise Shabby was here, I'd say it's like an Elise Shabby day, potentially. That kind of rider, right?
I'm still salty that she's not here. Gracie had a great point this morning, but I just
that big stage win is coming for her in a tour, and I hope it's the Tour de France fun.
Yeah,
but
same.
yeah, even though like you never know on a stage like tomorrow, it's there's still so many big days ahead, but things can happen, and you still got to be paying attention as a GC rider, even when it is only stage 3, because that's still a fair amount of climbing. So
yeah,
this is the days, like I was thinking about it today, the fact that Annemiek is not here and how she wouldn't be afraid early in a tour to already light shit up.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, tomorrow would be a day that she would probably have bookmarked. There's not really another rider on the start line that would take a stage like tomorrow and be like, this is my day. I think the GC riders are looking at the stages later on in the week, and those stages are going to be fantastic. But I also think with how close the general classification is right now, I mean, there are so many riders that could slot into that red jersey, like almost on accident if they got up the road. But I do think that ST Works Pro Time is not necessarily going to defend Blanca Voss being in the red jersey, but I think that she could defend it herself by just kind of sitting in, hanging out, not doing much work. And I think honestly it's a good stage for her to win because she's got that kick on her and the climbs are not going to impact her until later in the race. So I actually feel like not only will she keep it, she might gain seconds and come out with more seconds, but it's cool to see the intermediate sprints playing a little bit of a role and her going for that intermediate sprint. And she had the virtual GC before they even got to the line, and by finishing second she held onto it. But yeah, the GC is still like very much up for grabs before we even get to the climbs.
Yeah, I mean, that's a smart tactic by SD Works Pro Time as well, just taking those seconds away so then Demi doesn't have to worry about any competitors that might try to go for them. I think that's going to be more of a factor later on in the race, more so than at the start, because it's just too much energy to worry about that right now, and things are really close. I am curious to see how the bonus seconds play out a bit later, because I think with the big climbing stages, we can't sit here right now and say who of the top, we'll say 4 or 5 climbers at the moment is going to be the standout climber who really just rides away like an Annemiek in the past, which is really exciting because it's a big question mark.
Yeah, it's cool that we don't know.
Yeah. It's the first year, actually. I mean, because before Annemiek, it was Anna van der Breggen and Annemiek. And now it's a bit like the door is wide open. And, yeah, I want to see Cassia go head-to-head with Demi in big stages, and also see how Niamh goes, because she can potentially, who knows, maybe she'll outclimb Demi. And Gaia Riolini and Elisa Longo Borghini.
Entirely possible. And Kasia was the GC hopeful that had the easiest time of it today. She finished 4th on the stage behind Caroline Swinkels in 3rd, and who also had a great day. Took the climber's jersey, took maximum points on the Cat 3, and then finished 3rd on the stage. So yeah, pretty impressive from Caroline Swinkels. But Kasia finished 4th. So she was pretty much the only rider that was like, she was probably a little bit nervous about the crashes, but she didn't get caught behind them like Demi, and obviously didn't go down. So she's kind of riding into the 3rd stage in the best place of all of the hopefuls to come in the coming stages.
I would love to see her get a big GC win. It would be very, very cool and highly possible. I'd say this is the best chance in years that we've seen for her.
All right, we'll wrap up this with a couple audio diaries. We have an audio diary from Maike van der Duin of Canyon-SRAM. See how she felt about the stage.
Hello from the Vuelta in Spain, together with Maike and Zoe. Hi, Zoe. We started today stage 2 after yesterday's TTT. The morning around 8:30. 8:30 we went for breakfast, and we have our own chef with us. So every meal is really exciting and really nice. And he made this morning some special rice pudding, omelette, and really good bread. Today, stage 2 of the Vuelta. It was not a really hard stage, but there was one longer climb in the middle. I think Kasia finished 4th today, and all the GC riders are finished in time, so we can be happy with that. Nobody is in problems or
no crashes.
One small crashes, but everyone is fine after today. And the best thing from today was
the downhill.
The downhill.
When it was finally dry.
The downhill was dry after the whole morning in the rain.
Yeah.
That was really positive. And I think they had planned that it was raining the whole day, but it was all right.
Yeah.
It was all right. Yeah. And we finished today with a really good dinner from Silvio. Some pasta with chicken and crispy chicken. Yeah. But now we are finishing our day off with our series from Netflix. We are watching together The Gentleman, and we are at episode 4. So I think we can finish this season this week together, Zoe and Maike. This is our diary number day 1 from us. Ciao, ciao. Good night. Ciao. Bye.
Next, we have an audio diary from Georgia Baker of Liv AlUla Jayco, who is one of those riders that went down in one of the crashes and rode in actually with Niamh Fisher-Black and Misha Bredewold, Lizzie Dugnan, a bunch of the riders that went down, I believe, in that second crash. So let's hear from Georgia Baker.
Hey everyone, it's Georgia Baker from Liv AlUla Jayco. I'm currently in our hotel room somewhere in Spain. I'm not very good at our locations, but yeah, we have made it to our second accommodation, and after stage 2, today was a pretty hectic day. A lot happened. It was about a 3-hour race, but yeah, it was wet roads today, and because the Valencia hasn't had any rain in the past 6 months, the roads were quite slippery, so there were lots of crashes. Not anything too big, I don't think, but particularly going into the finale, there was quite a few, and unfortunately I was involved in one with 2 kilometres to go, so that was really disappointing for the team. The girls had worked really well leading up into the finale for me, and they had done heaps of work after the final climb with 40 kilometres to go to keep the gap from the other sprinters. So yeah, it would have been great if I could finish it off for them, but unfortunately, yeah, I came down in one of the crashes that happened. But yeah, we still took a lot of positives from the day, definitely. We rode really well together as a team, and I think we can have some really good results in the next 6 stages to come. And yeah, so now I'll give you a bit of a rundown on what happens, I suppose, after each stage. And given that in the Vuelta our stages start quite late, around 1 p.m. each day, 1 to 2 p.m. each day, the finish time of the stages is around 5. So we hop straight on the bus, have a shower, and we have food. Then we get back, and as soon as we get back to our hotel, and usually we change hotels every day, and once we get back, we pretty much have some more food. We'll usually have dinner, and we have massages and treatment and things like that. So yeah, our days kind of all flow into one, because it's just pretty much a cycle. We wake up, pack your suitcase, have breakfast, and then hop on the bus and race. Then you come back, eat and sleep. But yeah, it's really nice to be here in Valencia. Today we had a little bit of rain, but looking forward to the rest of the week. I think we've got some really warm days coming up, so we'll get a bit of a mixed bag. But yeah, I'll report back in stage 6 and 8, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, hope you enjoyed a little snippet of today's stage 2 recap. Thanks.
And then we have an audio diary from Alessia from FDJ-Suez. Let's hear how her day went.
Hola, Abby. It's really nice for me to have this diary during the stage race. It's my first time at La Vuelta, and it's everything a bit new because it's also my first time in a World Tour team. And for the moment, I'm really happy about that. Yesterday we did the TTT, and we came there with a lot of work, and we tried to do our best. And I think in the end we did a really good team job. So we were really happy about that and proud of each other. Today it was a bit different kind of stage, and we suddenly had the rain that we were not really expecting, because everybody was like saying, okay, we go to Spain and it will be finally sunny and good weather. But in the end, it was not that good. But first of all, we are really happy as a team that we could almost avoid every crash. So this is the most important thing. And then, I think we had also today a really positive day, because we could stay in the front with our leader and fight until the line. Also, if it was really, we need to say it was really, really a chaotic finish, and with so many crashes, the tension in the bunch was really, really high. So also for that, we're really, really happy about the result in the end. And now we need to look forward to the next days. And for today and also for the next stages, I will be domestic for the team. So my role will be to really be the bodyguard for our leaders, to be there when they need. And today it was really nice, because I really need to take care of them, to look if they were good covered with the rain and everything, if they need food or drink or whatever. So it was nice, and it's a completely different job from what I was used before. So I think it's nice, and for sure it will be really, really good if, thanks for your work, someone can achieve an even better result. So we are really looking forward to the next stages, and to be there to try to fight, and hopefully to get even some good podiums or win, because we have some really strong riders. And for me also, it's nice to be here with the team, and I can say I can almost feel a bit at home, because we are 3 Italians and we have the Italian mafia in the team. And that's sometimes even more comfortable if you have 2 other girls that are from your same country, because it's easier to walk, to speak. And it's nice. And I think I will try to enjoy day by day this first Grand Tour for me, and let's see what it's coming from in the end. Hope it was interesting, and let's see what the other days are taking.
And finally, Brodie Chapman checking in from Lidl-Trek.
So, La Vuelta Femenina 2024 started with the team time trial, and being on Lidl-Trek, there's an expectation that you can win. This team has a pretty good track record of winning team time trials, and I personally was very excited to race with Ellen Van Dijk in a team time trial. She's a bit of a legend. So yeah, it was going really well. We were going really fast, which was the goal. As team time trials often have a little bit of drama when you're under pressure going fast. And in the final corner, it appears that Ellen actually had a flat tyre, which caused her to crash, which was obviously pretty devastating. And Eleanor was directly behind her. Luckily, they're okay and they both could race today. But that kind of left us touch and go for whether we could actually still win. Luckily, we had such a lead. Thanks to those two girls' contribution that we could save it by 0.2 of a second. So yeah, nice to stand on the podium as a team. Bit bittersweet because Ellen couldn't be there. She was in the hospital getting her face stitched up. Mixed feelings, but definitely added the drama. We all got to wear some different t-shirts today in the stage. I had some little polka dots on, which was funny. And then today's stage was meant to be more stress-free for us because, it was a sprint stage. We didn't come with a sprinter. And we just wanted to give the girls a bit of a chance to recover after yesterday. But it turned out to be rather stressful because there was a lot of crashes. When it rains in Spain sometimes, there's a bit of this kind of like ice rink feeling on the roads, which, I think it's pretty hard to manage when it's wet. It was kind of the roads were on and off wet as well. Luckily, all our riders are okay. Lizzie did have a crash, but today she was just this lovely Green Lantern beacon in the peloton, piloting everybody around really safely. And unfortunately, she was just caught behind a bad moment. But again, she made it through to the finish and can start again tomorrow. So yeah, glad to make it out alive. Really stoked for my friend AJ to take the win. I know how much it means to her and how much she really soaks it up. So that was quite cool. But GC riders are safe. Everyone's motivated. We're back in our normal t-shirts tomorrow of the Lidl-Trek colours. And we'll keep going from here. That is all.
Thanks everyone for listening. We will be back later on this week for another bonus episode from La Vuelta Femenina. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ron, and good night.